The Disney film Encanto is all about family and the relationships found within it, whether these relationships are strong and loving or need a bit of work. Looking at the Madrigals, which familial relationships from it are the healthiest and which are bordering on potentially toxic. I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Encanto Family Relationships Healthy to Healthiest. Because Mirabel is the main character and is implied to be the next head of the Madrigal household, we're going to primarily be focusing on her relationships with her relatives. Additionally, because there aren't any truly toxic relationships within the casita, we're instead going to start with the least healthy relationships and work our way up to the strongest and healthiest ones. As such, the first familial relationship on our list is Mirabel and Abuela Alma. Honestly, if Alma was more purposefully malicious towards Mirabel, this relationship would have easily been classified as emotionally toxic. However, we are going to cut Abuela just a bit of slack, even if we still have to put this relationship at the bottom of our list. While yes, Alma still cares about Mirabel and doesn't necessarily want to hurt her, she does tend to unintentionally see her as sort of a scapegoat when it comes to any adversity that the Madrigal family faces.
Let the rest of the family do what they do best.
By the climax of the film, Alma essentially calls Mirabel the problem child to her face, claiming that Mirabel is trying to hurt the family on purpose. Simply put, when it comes to Mirabel, Alma for the most part is dismissive and quick to blame. Unfortunately, Mirabel doesn't help matters in that instead of talking to her and sharing her feelings or concerns, Mirabel would rather take it upon herself to try and prove herself to her grandmother. Because she bottles up her emotions when it comes to her grandmother, this eventually leads to Mirabel blowing up at Alma. Thankfully, the two are able to work it out, with Alma acknowledging her mistakes and being willing to do better, while Mirabel is willing to forgive her and help her fix the family. The love found at the core of the relationship is real. It's just that both characters were so blinded by their own issues and goals, with Alma focusing so much on her home and Mirabel wanting to prove her worth, that this love sort of fell to the wayside. We're just glad that this love came through in the end. Right above them, we have Mirabel and Isabella. Sister relationships can be pretty complex, and Mirabel and Isabella are no different. Taking influence from her grandmother, Isabella mostly just saw Mirabel as being in the way and as someone who wanted to mess with her. At the same time, Isabella was also more than a little jealous of her younger sister and her freedom from not having to be so perfect all the time. Of course, jealousy goes both ways, with Mirabel brushing Isabella off as having an easy life and referring to her as a spoiled princess. So yeah, tensions between these two are fairly high.
Apologize for ruining my life.
However, once Isabella is honest with her sister and Mirabel sees how much pressure Isa is under, the two are able to find common ground. Once it's all said and done, the two of them seem more than willing to support one another instead of just passing judgments against each other. Next up is Mirabel and her tia, Peppa. For the few interactions that they have, Mirabel almost seems to be on eggshells around her aunt, though we can't really blame her for that. You definitely don't want to anger the relative who can create thunderstorms with her emotions. On Peppa's side, she seems to be almost as bad as Alma and Isabella when it comes to blaming Mirabel for things. She also seems to be easily aggravated with Mirabel, as seen at the breakfast table when Mirabel took her seat and in the nursery when she heard Mirabel talking about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Simply put, these two don't have a close aunt and niece relationship. However, we are willing to put this relationship above the others because, along with the lack of interaction, Peppa doesn't seem to go out of her way to tell Mirabel to stay out of the way like Alma and Isabella do. Following them, we have Mirabel and Camilo. Another relationship with very few interactions, unfortunately. You would think these two cousins would be close given that they're the same age. But no, Camilo for the most part is just doing his own thing. The only major interaction they have is during the "we don't talk about Bruno" when Camilo is playfully trying to freak Mirabel out with his Bruno impression. Not too malicious since he is just a teen, but not exactly a bonding moment either. Still, we can't say there's any bad blood between them, so we'll have to give this relationship a decent spot. Next up is Mirabel and her Tio, Felix. Yet another relationship where we don't really see how close or not close they are. However, the interactions they do have tend to lead more on the positive side. After all, Felix was the only one who was willing to be completely honest with Mirabel when she started asking about Bruno, unlike his wife Peppa, who didn't want to say anything. Given that Felix is another powerless member of the Madrigal family, he also doesn't seem to see Mirabel as a burden like some of the other members of the family do. Mirabel, in turn, seems to respect her uncle and doesn't seem to have any real conflict with him. Coincidentally enough, Mirabel and Dolores have a similar relationship. Dolores doesn't mind telling Mirabel about what she's heard regarding the magic, and during We Don't Talk About Bruno, she hints at Bruno not being quite as bad as the rest of her family is claiming. They don't interact too much more outside of that, but Mirabel does call Dolores her favorite older cousin. Unlike her and Isabella, Mirabel and Dolores don't have any jealousy or aggravation between them, and Mirabel even helps set her up with Mariano at the end of the film. The only point of contention was when Dolores shared Bruno's vision, but we'll acknowledge that was more because Dolores was genuinely freaking out about it, not because she wanted to get back at Mirabel or anything like that. Getting into the healthiest relationships that Mirabel has with her family, we have Mirabel and her mother, Julieta. When it comes to Mirabel, Julieta seems to take the opposite approach of Alma's, in that she's always being encouraging and letting Mirabel know how special she is. Julieta may worry about her daughter, but she never sees her as a burden. Unfortunately, it could be said that Julieta is slightly dismissive of Mirabel in that she didn't completely believe her about the cracks. Because of this, Mirabel tends to be a bit dismissive in return, occasionally brushing off her mom's love and support out of slight frustration. But even with this bit of conflict, the love between these two is pretty evident in that Mirabel is able to be honest with her mother while Julieta always has her daughter's back, frequently pointing out whether Alma is being too hard on her.
You've always been too hard on Mirabel.
It may not be a perfect mother-daughter relationship, but it is pretty close. We're going to rank the relationship between Mirabel and Luisa next. Being the middle and youngest sisters respectively, Luisa and Mirabel seem to have a pretty good relationship. While yes, it took Luisa a bit to be honest with Mirabel, that wasn't because she didn't trust her, but because Luisa wanted to keep up an image of strength. Once Luisa's true stress was revealed, however, Mirabel took the time to try and help her feel better. What's great about this relationship is how much they're able to support each other. We see throughout surface pressure how focused Luisa is on physically protecting her little sis, while Mirabel is all about that emotional support, letting her know that it's okay not to carry so much weight. She also seems to care deeply about helping Luisa the most when it seems like she's losing her gift. For this, we felt that we had to rank this relationship pretty high. Just outside the top 3, we have a unique relationship, Mirabel and Casita. The Madrigal home is practically a character in its own right, with some even theorizing that its magic is actually Abuelo Pedro's spirit, and its connection to Mirabel seems to be the strongest. Whether it's doing what it can to help Mirabel on her journey, encouraging her, or even trying to protect her as it's falling apart, Casita cares deeply about Mirabel. In turn, Mirabel sees Casita as more than just a home. Out of all the family members, she's seen speaking to Casita the most, truly treating it as not just a person, but as family. Even the small things like her waving goodbye to Casita in the morning add up a lot when she's the only one doing it. With how strong this relationship is, it's really no wonder that Mirabel ends up being the one who brings the magic back in the end. Our bronze medal of healthiness is going to go to the relationship between Mirabel and her father, Augustin. Disney dads don't get the best reputation. They're either somewhat clueless, aggressively overprotective, or, well, dead. Thankfully, Augustin easily ranks as one of the best, and he and Mirabel seem incredibly close. Being powerless himself, Augustin is able to relate to Mirabel and tries to talk to her about her feelings. As for Mirabel, though she may roll her eyes at how accident-prone he is, the affection and admiration she has for her father is clear. What ranks this relationship so high up is how supportive Augustin is of his daughter, being willing to hide Bruno's vision to protect her and then standing up for Mirabel after the disastrous proposal dinner.
Think of the family.
I was thinking of my daughter.
But while these two have a healthy father-daughter relationship, it's not our top relationship. Earning our silver medal of healthiness is Mirabel and her estranged Tio, Bruno. Despite not seeing him for a decade, these two quickly formed a bond. Once Mirabel learned what Bruno did for her, she wanted to bring him home so that he wouldn't have to live in the walls anymore. Additionally, even while she pushed him to use his powers for her sake, it was clear that Mirabel still cared about Bruno as a person. She encouraged and emotionally supported him instead of just seeing him as a source for visions like many others did. Of course, we all know how much Bruno went beyond the call of duty for an uncle, being willing to leave his family in order to hide his vision and protect his niece. Additionally, even if his vision was unclear, Bruno never once saw Mirabel as someone who could bring disaster and even encouraged her efforts in saving the miracle, something not even Mirabel's parents did. These two really are the gold standard for how strong and loving a relationship between family can be. Or at least they would if not for one final relationship. Finally, getting our gold medal of healthiness is Mirabel and Antonio. Out of all the relationships Mirabel has with her relatives, the one she has with Antonio is the only one that's completely free of any sort of conflict or drama. Neither Mirabel nor Antonio ever seem to dismiss each other, and the two of them are 100% supportive of one another. We see Mirabel comforting Antonio before and during his gift ceremony, and after he gets his gift, she never lets him know how hurt she is about not having a gift. But Antonio doesn't just leave Mirabel behind. He volunteers to help her and Bruno have another vision by offering up space in his room. And much like Bruno, he never sees Mirabel's efforts to save the miracle as a possible threat, nor does he ever see his older cousin as a burden. Heck, in their first scene with each other, we see Antonio wishing that Mirabel had a door too, not because he thinks she needs a gift, but because he doesn't want her to be lonely and sad. These two may be cousins, but we're sure that not too many people would disagree with the claim that Mirabel and Antonio are close enough to be practically siblings. As such, they easily have the healthiest familial relationship within the Madrigal family. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.